now.
You're listening to eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge.
Hello and welcome to eLearnChat, our new podcast featuring prominent leaders, shakers and movers in the e-learning and training industry.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rick Zanotti, and welcome to eLearnChat, episode number 52. It is March 28th, 2012, and wherever you are, we hope you're having a great day. Joining us, as always, is our co-host, Colleen. Hey, Colleen, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rick. How are you?
I am doing very well. And, for us, it's early in the morning. Yeah, we're all three of us now today. Well, let's introduce our host before we start going off onto a diatribe, or our guests. Anyway, today we've got our twofer. He's been on. This is going to be a second time. But more than that, he was our original first guest. So this is kind of cool. We've got Bill Cushard back with us. Hey, Bill, how are you?
Hey, Rick, Colleen, how are you guys? This is great. It's great to be here for a second time. This is so cool.
This is doing good. And it's been a little over a year now since we've last gotten together, on about a year and about 5 months. So
I think that's right.
Lots of things have happened, and you've got some announcements to make and all sorts of good stuff. So what have you been up to in this year and a half? Last time you were here, you were kind of in the beginning of starting your own endeavor, your company. You were working, I guess, with a company and doing your own thing at the same time. How's that been going?
That has been going quite well. That project we were working on, the Self-Made Leader, was an experiment in sort of changing the way leaders can be developed rather than a formal training class. And so I've taken some of what we learned in those experiments into some companies I worked for and trying to change the way we develop leaders. That's a big focus of mine.
That's great. So what did you find in that experiment?
We found that there were many people who were leaders and who became good at it that never attended formal leadership development programs. And this isn't scientific evidence, but there were story after story of people who had become managers and directors and supervisors who were getting pretty good at what they were doing, and they were not attending formal training. And so they were doing a combination of self-learning, learning from others, finding mentors, reading books. And so that has inspired what we're trying to work on with the Self-Made Leader. And when I develop leadership development programs for companies, particularly the one I'm with now, the basis of it is not a classroom session, but an ongoing process of developing people to be leaders. And what I'm really trying to do is turn it around from the leader looking for a training class from the training department to the leader seeking development opportunities on their own and being more responsible as an individual for developing their leadership skills. And then someone like me supporting those efforts and trying to motivate and encourage and engage people to find that.
That's right. Yeah, it's really interesting how many times people get thrust into the role of leadership. Okay, you're now a supervisor, you're now a manager, you're now a vice president, and you've done none of it. And all of a sudden you've got people under you, you don't have the people skills maybe, or or knowledge of how to lead someone. You know, you've probably seen this, and a lot of times they'll promote the most technical person or the most knowledgeable in a certain area, but maybe not necessarily the most people-oriented or the most managerial type. So you kind of run into that. You kind of promote people into a possibility of failure more than success.
Yes, and if you that reminds me of one of the first books on management I ever read, which on that very subject. Linda Hill, she's from Harvard Business School. She wrote that book, Becoming a Manager, and I'm pretty sure it was based on her dissertation topic. And she interviewed stockbrokers that became supervisors or managers, and I think it was technical people, it was computer programmers or technical people who became managers, and told the stories of the ones who were promoted were the ones that the technically successful people. The best stockbroker in the office was the best salesperson, right? They made that person the manager, right? And so perhaps that shouldn't have been. Maybe it should have, maybe it shouldn't have, but that's the basis for promoting people oftentimes, and not necessarily the right
And then
one.
you take somebody like a salesperson who likes being in that game, and you put him outside of their game. Now they're managing other people who like being in that game of running and going, and they're not as good as sales managers as they were as salespeople. I've met a lot of salespeople throughout my life who hate being managers. It's sort of interesting because they really enjoyed being more with the client. So a lot of them, the more successful ones, I think, go out with the sales reps. And that way they're still in it, but they're not directly in it like they were before, but they still have a hand in it, and they enjoy that. And the sales reps like it because they have somebody with experience working with them.
Yes, that's really a good point. And I learned this lesson from a previous boss who told me, Bill, it's not about you anymore. Once you become a manager, it's about your team. And I've said that message every time I've talked with a manager. It's not about you anymore. And as long as the person thinks it's about them, they probably won't be as effective a leader as they could be.
That's true. Hey, Colleen, how is the chat room looking right now?
Rick, we have Dawn, we have Lever, and we have Jeff. And for anyone viewing right now and they're not logged in, if they'd like to join the conversation, they can do so by logging into justin.tv/relatecorp, or they can tweet using the hashtag eLearnChat. And so that way we can, get some more feedback from all of our viewers.
Yep, get involved. It's more fun that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a good leadership expert with us today, so ask questions.
Yeah, now Dawn is saying that, oftentimes organizations have this habit of promoting from within, and it's not often always a good idea. They just, have someone there and they don't look for talent outside, someone that may be more suitable for the role or the position.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems when people promote from within, and it's a problem that shouldn't happen, but it does, is you get a lot of pettiness sometimes. You get people that worked with you that now don't like working for you. And a good manager doesn't say you work for me. We work together. We work as a team.
That's right.
And that the old style management was, hey, I own you. And it doesn't really work that way, and it's not a good way to work with people. I think that the more you can motivate somebody to feel like they're part of something versus, hey, this is the order you have to follow. Now, sometimes you have to follow an order, period. That's just life. But more often than not, if you work in a good team environment or everybody knows what their role is and how they belong in that team, then there's not that feeling of I've got somebody, overhead just ready to control whatever I'm doing.
Yes, that issue of promoting from within versus hiring from outside, that's a really important one, because there's a line between promoting from within and not getting fresh perspectives versus bringing people in from the outside and then demotivating those internally who think they should have been the ones promoting, and that there should be more internal promotion. And so I don't know if there's a right answer to that, but there's certainly a balance that an organization has to figure out what's best for them. Because if your culture says promote from within and you start bringing in outside people, you can really upset a lot of people. You can lose a lot of high talented people, which is obviously very expensive. But if your culture is to bring people in from the outside and then you start promoting from within, you might not have thought about preparing people to be developed for the next level. And now you have people in leadership positions who aren't ready. And so, gosh, what a tough problem.
It is a tough one.
That's one that should be studied.
It's really and I don't know that there's ever a solution for that one, because sometimes you do need people or different skill sets from outside. Other times you just want to move somebody up who has shown an ability or does get along with people like them, whatever. I think the hardest thing is trying to figure out, well, actually, not a hard thing. One thing I've heard a lot when I've dealt with people who either got promoted or something, or you bring somebody into a managerial position for people under you, is they don't care who's coming in as long as they can learn from that person. I've heard that a lot. If I can learn from them and I feel comfortable working with them, they're pretty happy. Learning seemed to be a pretty important thing for a lot of people. Not just have somebody come over who's, the boot on the shoulder kind of thing, but rather somebody who, I'm going to teach you something. I'm going to do something with you. They seem to like that.
And what's the expression? The A players hire A's and the B players hire C's.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's something to that. So you're probably talking about the A players who want to hire someone to learn from, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's always my perspective. I mean, if you're putting a team together, even if it's just a football team, you don't hire all great quarterbacks. You need a linebacker. You kind of need a running back and an offensive lineman. You need a second stringer. You need people who have different talents to assemble the team.
I think Indianapolis proved that last year with their record.
Yeah, I think
they won one. So.
Some teams are better than others.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Colleen.
Tricia Ransom, she's joining us in Twitter, and she says that this subject reminds her of Michael from The Office. I'm not familiar with The Office, but she says that he's a great salesman, but a horrible leader.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? In some cases we talked about this. You make the technical person the leader because they're the best at their job, and now they still want to be the technical person. And so you really have to either get that person to change or allow them to be the technical person.
That's true.
You just have to make a decision. It could be a tough one.
I remember I was vice president of IT at a mid-sized company one time, and I hired a programming manager under me. He was a really good guy, but he was very competitive. So one day I remember we are working, and he comes into my office and goes, "How much did you code today?" Well, I really don't code that much right now. I'm stuck in a lot of meetings. He goes, "I beat you." I go, "Okay, you did." And he was just extremely competitive as far as, how we do this. So everybody under him was very competitive. And eventually they had to kind of, I left and they moved him out of the position of management into more of a programming role because as a manager, he just irritated everybody. You never know. He was a coder. He really was a coder at heart. And you put him in, he was totally non-people oriented. Asperger's at its best. And it just didn't work out. So sometimes you never know. They may have a good skill set when you interview them, and then when they get in front of people, it's like, oh my gosh, what did I just do?
And, if you think about it, that person, if they realized what their role was, if they had 10 programmers working for them, they could take the idea that it's my job to get 10 people to program a lot and to program well, rather than just me, one person. Think about that. You're multiplying the production and the quality and the work and the performance with one person leading 10 others and getting 10 others to perform well. Right. I mean, that's the secret.
Yeah, he actually had 5 under him. I had him and an operations manager, and then he had 5 under him, and it was a competition. So we had like a 7-way competition going on. It was actually pretty funny. It's like, okay, I don't think we're getting any work done, but we're competing really well. So.
Right. Well, sometimes competition can be good, right? It brings the best out of people. It certainly can.
In this case, I got people coming into my office saying, "I want to kill him."
So that didn't work.
It didn't quite
I have another
work.
question, Rick, from Trisha again. And she'd like to know, why are people promoted on past skills and successes in an old role rather than the skills and attributes needed for the new role?
That's the age-old question. I don't think people really know why. All we have to go on is what people have done in the past, right? That's why there is very little that I have found of measuring potential, right? So how do you predict the future? How do you know if someone will perform well? Try buying a mutual fund. It doubled last year, but the next year it drops in value. So it's the tough one. You have to it's a judgment call, and it's subjective, and all we have to go on is they did great in the past with these other skills. It's a tough one.
I'll take it down to even a more base level. Most managers who hire managers don't have an idea what they're doing either. So you run into that issue. If you've got somebody who's a president or a vice president who's very good at maybe running a company, but they don't really have an idea of who they're hiring and what they're hiring and why they're hiring. And they might promote people that just they like, but don't necessarily have the skill set needed to get the rest of the people working well. So
there have been lots of books written. I wish I could remember them all now, telling stories of people who are really good at identifying talent. Right? Some people have the knack for it.
Yeah.
And what some people have tried to do is figure out what those characteristics are so that other people can learn it. right? Steve Jobs was good at finding talented people, and he was always a good recruiter. If you read the books about him, that was one of his skills. And so, but why him? How did he know? He probably thought about it more than everybody else. Most of us are just trying to get our jobs done and not really spending time sitting at our desk, staring at the wall, thinking, what kind of person do I need for this role? What kind of people are out there? And evaluating and thinking about it and spending the time to think about it. I don't think we do that enough. That's probably the secret.
Now, I think in Steve Jobs' case, if you walked in with a black T-shirt and jeans, you were hired.
I don't think there were any black T-shirt turtlenecks left after he was done, Rick.
Did he have 10, or did he have just one that he kept wearing?
Hundreds? Is that what they said?
Yeah.
All the same exact T-shirts.
All the same exact T-shirts.
He was an engineer at heart. I know it.
Rick, are you going to talk to us about your... Bill, are you going to talk to us about your book?
Yeah, you've got a new book coming out.
I do have a new book coming out. It's my first book, and it's pretty exciting and scary all at the same time. So yeah, let's talk about that. I wrote a blog post. I write for the Daily Mind Flash blog every week, and this was fall of 2010. I wrote this blog post about 3 critical skills that learning professionals need now. And those skills were, business acumen, rapid instructional design, and then social media and collaboration. Those were the ones. And I got a lot of comments on it, a lot of emails for it. I even had an invitation to speak at a conference as a result of that blog post. And so I thought, well, gosh, that could be a book, And Mitch Levy, my co-author, he approached me at the Enterprise Learning and Conference Expo. This was last fall in Anaheim, and he had read the blog post too, and we got to talking and he thought we could turn that into a book. And so I thought, well, gosh, if he thinks enough about that work that people might want to read it, I figured I'd give it a go. And to be honest, I thought that this type of format, so the book is written in the spirit of tweets. So each message in the book is limited to 140 characters, and so I'm sort of a Twitter enthusiast. I enjoy it, and so I thought this is a great way to utilize that medium to write a book, but also it was a good way to take on the challenge of a first book.
I think it's a clever idea.
Why it happened.
It's a very clever idea, and it makes for quick reading.
Yes, that's what I think. It's one thing to write a 600-page book and pack everything into it, but the more I use Twitter and the more I speak with people on Twitter, the bite-sized information can be quite insightful. And it reminds me of a Mark Twain quote that he said, "I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time." So in many ways, it takes more effort and thought and time to write shorter messages and shorter emails and shorter letters, and speak less. It takes more effort.
I was reading a review of some sort of, I think it was a lens product on Amazon yesterday, and the guy goes, it was a battery, that's what it was. It was a Canon battery. And the guy writes, "Good battery, it works well. They say I need to write more, so I'm writing more." And that was it. I guess you have a minimum you can say on a review, and so the guy just kept, okay, I have to write more. All he really wanted to say was great battery. That was it. But he got the message across. He was happy.
That's right.
They're asking about your book, Bill, so I put the link into the chat for them. I believe they can pre-order right now.
Pre-order now. It could be as ready as end of April. It's in the book has been written. It's been to printing, and now there's some final collections of the forward message and some of the praise quotes, that go on the inside cover. Otherwise, all the graphic art and all the stuff is ready to go. So I think the Kindle version could be ready as early as end of April.
Cool.
Okay.
It's pretty exciting.
I was going to ask if you have a Kindle version coming.
Yeah.
I haven't bought a
of
real
course,
book in ages.
This is the digital age. We have to have a Kindle version.
I think I think I bought 1 or 2 books in the last year. I mean, not hardcover, but just physical books. Everything else has been Kindle, or yeah, pretty much Kindle. I don't even like the Kindle reader, but I love the Kindle books.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do not have a Kindle. I think this will have to force me to actually get one. Frankly, I use the library a lot.
Do you really? No. Do you have an iPad?
I do not have an iPad.
Uh-oh.
I have laptop and I have iPhone. I mean, a man's got to know his limitations.
You don't need a Kindle reader. You can get Kindle app for iPhone or Kindle for your Windows or Mac PC, and it'll run just as well.
And I have that. I do use that.
So it's kind of fun. I read a lot on my PC sometimes. I don't feel like going off to sit on a sofa, and the PC's comfy. Just to sit and read books. But
yeah, and I use my Kindle app on my iPhone for reading quite a bit.
Do you do it on the iPad too?
Honestly, I read more on my phone than I do on the iPad.
Interesting. How come?
That is interesting.
Because it's the size of the palm of my hand.
Oh, so you just like the comfort. The iPad is a great reading device, but it's a bit heavy. Mm-hmm. I remember, I've had the iPad for 2 years. I'm on the third one now, and my fingers were getting all sore just from sitting there for 2 hours holding. It's not that heavy, but after a while, your fingers lock up just from holding it. It's not the most ergonomic thing to hold for a long time, partly because I guess if you put it in a book holder, it'll probably be better because then you have your hands open. But it's definitely a little different getting used to reading on an iPad. I have the Kindle Fire, the smaller one. Now, Colleen had it and didn't like it. She had a problem with it, performance-wise. Mine has been okay. I love reading on that more than the iPad, which is sort of funny. So
Interesting.
Because it's smaller. It feels smaller. And I have a book cover on it. It feels like I'm reading a small book. Mm-hmm. It's like a paperback. It's really...
Yeah, the size of the Kindle Fire is perfect for reading. The iPad, the reason why I use my iPhone is because I have it with me all the time. So wherever I'm at, I can catch up on the book.
True.
With the iPad, I don't want to get used to the size of the fonts, etc., and then have to switch back and forth to the phone. So I've just gotten used to using the phone all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the problem with the iPad, too, is the Kindle app isn't as good as what they have on the Kindle Fire, which is sort of slimy on Amazon's part, but they give you a better app on the Fire for reading than they do on any of their other devices. You get font choices. They still can't figure out left justification for the most part. Everything's badly kerned and spread out. It just doesn't look that good. But, I mean, they're only a multi-billion-dollar company. They can't afford to actually have good programmers. That's another issue, but... rant, rave. I send them notes all the time complaining. Come on, guys. What does it take? I remember in college we wrote one of our first word processing programs. It wasn't that hard. So, yeah, fun. Gotta love it.
So you have to buy my book on your Kindles and on your iPads.
I will.
So you can read it for sure.
Oh, I will.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty good. So are you all done writing it, or are you still kind of in the final editing stages?
No, it's been edited twice. It's been written, so it's just assembling the final pieces of the forward message and the praises, and that's it. So it's ready. It's just about ready. It's just a matter of me finishing up the last couple of things, but it's written.
That's great. That's great. You excited, huh?
I am pretty excited.
That's
I am pretty excited.
Now, are you going to publish this? Are you self-publishing on this one?
No. My co-author has a publishing company, so he is publishing it. So it'll be available on paperback, on Kindle, and on ebook. So it'll be a physical book through a publisher, and which is pretty exciting. So it's just a matter of now getting it out there, getting it up on Amazon, and getting it bookstores. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but we'll have to sell the thing.
So give us.
But I think there's some good topics in here. I'm really trying to talk to training professionals about some new skills that we need to learn, and some of us who are on Twitter and Google Plus, sort of some of this isn't necessarily new, but I'm trying to push trainers to think more like the business and not like a trainer. I've been in too many meetings with trainers who want to spend all this time making really good training, when all the director of sales cares about is increasing sales.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
It was fascinating. I was at the Adobe Learning Summit not the they didn't have it this year yet. The year before last in Orlando, well, actually last year in Orlando, and there was about at least 500 people in the audience for the keynote. And at one point, the keynoter, who I think was an anthropologist, said, "How many of you out there are on Twitter?" And it was less than 25%.
Yeah.
I was actually a little surprised, but it was a very small number of people. And his comment was, "Get on. It's it's not just what'd you have for lunch. It was there's all sorts of other stuff on Twitter, and it's funny. We had the opportunity on many occasions already. Colleen and I met through Twitter. I met Jeff through the show through Twitter. I met you through Terrence through Twitter.
I met Bill through Twitter.
It's
yes,
interesting.
we did, Colleen.
And we're all establishing friendships and relationships, not only on a professional but on a personal level, that we wouldn't probably have had easily just from the old traditional means of going to either to a trade show or calling people. It wouldn't have happened. And that, I think, is enriching all of us so much that it's pretty fascinating. What are the odds that Jeff Blanchard from Melbourne, Australia, would have shown up in L.A., had lunch with us on a couple of occasions this week, if we had never met on Twitter?
None.
It's pretty cool. And that's what I consider priceless. And, maybe, just maybe, one day the human situation will become less pathetic and we'll actually start getting along because we tweet with each other. You never know. Yeah. It's hard to go kill someone when you actually know who they are.
That's right.
Tricia says, Jimmy, her husband, says hi. I believe you've met.
Yes, I met Tricia and her husband in Chicago. We had dinner one night when I was there on business, and Tricia and I met on Twitter.
Exactly.
So, Twitter is the new bar, I guess.
Yeah. It's an alcohol-free bar.
That's right.
And we have a guest that'll be in a couple of weeks, Alison, and we met through Twitter as well, and we met at that tweet up, actually.
Oh, you have Alison Michaels on?
Yeah, she's going to be on in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, she's super.
And I met Alison originally through Twitter, and then I actually met her at the ASTD Tech Knowledge earlier this year, where I did a talk, and she was in the talk, so it was sort of interesting. And she came up to me and goes, "Hi, it's really interesting how you meet people and how you basically." And there's a lot of common threads right now with Twitter. A lot of people are, so all those who haven't actually gotten on Twitter, it's a chance to expand your circle of friends and your circle of professional colleagues, and I think that makes a big difference.
And to add to that, I can't tell you how many times I have. My first reaction now when I want to get a new idea is I go on Twitter and ask a question. I mean, that's what I do. And how do I do this? And I don't always get a response, but very often I do get the response. People give me ideas. And Jane Bozarth does this thing where whenever she uses Twitter for something useful, she takes a screenshot of it and sends it to her boss.
Oh, interesting.
And she has said this a lot of times when people say, "Why use Twitter?" And I've done that a few times. That has inspired me. I've taken screenshots when I've asked a question and gotten responses to something useful, and I put it into practice or applied something. And I've kept those in my Evernote, so I'm ready, and I send those to people who say, "Well, what do you use that for?"
Yep.
So I've done.
Yep, that's another one that a lot of people don't get into, and that's Evernote. And you go, hey, there are other tools, but that's a good one because it's everywhere. Any device, everywhere.
Now, I have a question. I want to circle back, Bill, to your book. And, I was reading the little excerpt where it says, demonstrate why learning professionals need to focus on results rather than activities, or understand what the business expects from the training, and speed up how they deliver training. Do you think there's a disconnect between the communication from the leadership in terms of what they want to get out of the training, which is why the IDs and the trainers focus more on the learning event rather than the business need? Because I think sometimes there's a disconnect in terms of what management actually wants. They can't actually communicate that effectively.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I even experienced this in my work too. But in the end, all the business cares about is improving performance, which could be sales or customer satisfaction or reducing costs. I mean, that's really all they care about. And ironically, what they often do is they go to the training and the learning department and say, "I need training for this," right? And so so smart learning professionals like us might say, "Well, wait a minute. What problem are you trying to solve?" And business people get upset and just say, "Just respond to my request. Just give me training. I need to move."
Exactly.
And so we just go back and then offer training, and then sometimes we wonder why it didn't work, or we struggle to figure out how it connected. So there is a disconnect, but I think what we have to do as learning professionals, and I make this point in the book over and over again, is that if the business goal is to increase sales, then the training department goal should be increase sales, right? Or at least contribute to increase in sales, rather than saying our goal is to...
That got a round of applause from the audience there.
Oh, that was an applause. Cool, yeah. Thumbs up. Sometimes we make our goals deliver a certain number of hours of training or launch certain training programs. Frankly, if our goals, and I make this point in the book too, our goals should be the business goals, whatever they are.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you, because I think we get sometimes wrapped up in the tools or the training event, etc. And if we don't understand what the actual business need is, oftentimes we can't go back to leadership and say, "Hey, I disagree with you," because we don't have a leg to stand on. We don't understand what the business need is.
Well, it's interesting because I think you're preaching to the choir on this one today, because I for years I've been telling people, look, if you're going to be an instructional designer, no matter what position you are in a company, if you don't know where that position fits in the company and in the company's bottom line, you will be laid off. When it happens, you won't have any value.
That's right.
And who gets laid off for the most part? It's sad, but it's people who either don't know, and sometimes it's just a flat-out numbers game, and you're stuck because you're in the wrong department, wrong time. But many times they go, okay, they try to keep the major amount of value they have, and they let the people who maybe don't have a clue. Like if you work for a company, like you said, as an instructional designer, and you don't really understand what the company does, there's a good chance you're probably not going to be there in the future when something bad happens, or if there is just a need to upgrade a department. And that's what a lot of people just don't get. They're stuck in the pedagogy of, okay, this is how it has to be done by textbook. But reality is, if you're making widgets, you better make better widgets. And you need to train people on how to make better widgets.
That's right.
It's such a common sense principle.
But this is interesting. I wish I could remember the link, but I saw a discussion on LinkedIn on this very topic, and it was about the software that MindFlash sells. And of course, I write for the blog, but they sell learning development software so that subject matter experts can put training materials out to people. And the idea is that it would get out there more rapidly. But this person was arguing that that is not a good idea, because pedagogy will suffer and andragogy will suffer. And shouldn't we be concerned about that?
Yeah.
And what about the the quality of learning theory and adult learning principles? Only we, the chosen learning professionals, could possibly understand that. So anything a subject matter expert does must not be any good. And so, my response to that is, wow, you're missing the boat. The sales guy has a customer on the phone right now, right? Not in 6 months. And if giving donuts can help make that sale, then give donuts. I mean, that's the solution.
Donuts.
And so the argument about learning theory only goes so far, because a customer is on the phone.
But you did hit on something very important. Without donuts, life is just not as good.
Where's the applause for that one?
I have one more question for you, Bill. Who do you think has more potential to influence real change in the business, the C-suite or the training and development department?
Oh, wow. I don't think we have to make a choice there. I mean, obviously the C-suite is driving it, right? And a good C-suite is listening to people all over the organization. So in a lot of cases, the C-suite just directs, and people try to bring good ideas, and they say, no, that's not where we're headed. Be quiet and execute your job like we said. But a good C-suite listens to everyone. So if a training department is good and talented, they understand the business and can go to the C-suite and say, we understand we're trying to improve the productivity of our customer service group. Okay, here we have some ideas for how to help improve that productivity. And a good C-suite listens to that. And so in that case, they're both at equal standing on influencing the direction of the business. So I think I qualify this by saying a good C-suite and a good training department is very equal in how they can influence the business, assuming they're good and they pay attention and they listen. We have two ears and one mouth. We should use them accordingly.
It's interesting. It also comes back to another issue, and that's the education of an instructional designer. A lot of the schools, and I've met a lot of instructional designers who have instructional technology degrees who know very little about technology because the schools just give you a title. But do you really know tech? Do you really understand the tools or how it? I'll give you a real big example. I've met many IDs with degreed IDs, some of them with masters, who have no idea what an LMS is.
Yeah.
No idea. And that's sort of interesting. Or have no idea how to write for an LMS. Again, rather interesting. And they're not old graduates. These are pretty much almost kids in their 20s. They just graduated, they're out in the field, and they've got no experience in that. So the schools don't talk about that. And then the other thing is, and like you said, if you don't know anything about business, it's going to be hard for you to learn it unless you're really willing to learn. And the schools teach nothing in instructional design about business. Yep. Not even the basic business structure. Here's what a business runs like. Here's an example of a manufacturing business, of a distribution business, of a financial insurance business, whatever. There's a lot of different kinds of. And once you know one business, you can pretty much figure out almost any kind of business and explain what the bottom line is. People use that term, okay, bottom line. What does it really mean?
Yes.
A lot of people don't know. And
Oh, yeah, and you're bringing up a really good point, because when that instructional designer gets into a company, the company places them in a separate office down the hall away from where the business is, even in another building in some cases. And a point I make in the book is that the instructional designer and even the trainer and the training director and the training manager, they should sit wherever the sales group sits or wherever the operations group sits, and their office should be next to the office. The instructional designer should be in the meetings with the staff meetings in the business.
Sure.
Right? They shouldn't have their own meetings.
Well, they're almost like apprentices.
They're
like apprentices in the business.
Yes, I agree with that. And a lot of times these support functions in organizations sit separately. Like HR and like finance and all, and marketing. But gosh, if you want to understand the business, you better attend the meetings, read the reports, sit with them, go to their break room, be embedded, right? Instead of in a separate place.
Well, I think the most enlightened companies take training out of training and they make it part of operations. So the trainers are attached to operational groups, meaning they're involved in the daily operations of the business. They know what's coming down. For example, one of our customers is GE. GE has decentralized training into operational groups, and they work with their teams, and they are right at the forefront with the developers of what's coming down the road. So as a result, they're very in tune with where they're going, what's coming up, what new projects are happening, and training is right there with development. Now that's smart, because the minute something's released, they're there. And they understand the business process. And I think that's such a key to successful training. And on the other hand, I've been in, and I'm sure all of us have been in many corporations where the trainers are in the little cubby holes way out in the back somewhere, or maybe downstairs or upstairs, but away from everybody, talking about training and what they're going to do. But there's no relationship of that talking about training to what the company maybe actually is doing. And this is a good one. If you're going to go to a trade show, I'll give you this as a manager. If you come up to me and say, I'd like to go to a trade show, I'd say, great. What are you going to learn there? I'm just going to go hang out at the bar with all the people. you're probably not going to get budget to go to a trade show. And I think that's
Right.
the problem. A lot of people go, they never sent me to a trade show. Well, that's because you haven't shown any interest in anything. You just want to go hang out and get drunk. That's not going to a trade show and learning anything. So I think that's one of the issues with the training departments on the whole, that they're not geared, like you said, for performance.
Right.
Yep.
And this seems to be generating quite a lot of questions. There seems to be a lot of activity in the chat room. One of the other questions that I see here is from Dawn. How do you avoid measuring the wrong things in the wrong time frame?
Oh, that is so easy. All you do is measure what the business already measures. That's my response to that one. In other words, if there's a weekly report that the operations group sends out to all their managers every week, and they have a meeting and they review that report, to me, I would set a goal that says in training, we are going to do 6 projects that year that change the numbers on that report, and then figure out which ones are the most important. I don't think the training department should ever come up with its own things to measure, unless it wants to measure internally how much it costs to make training, how long it takes us to develop training, how many people we train, and how many hours it takes, and how many, so we know how to staff our own group. We have internal measures to see if we're efficient or not. But if you really want to make an impact on the business, I mean, it's only 3 things. It's sales, margins, and costs. I mean, if you can do those 3 things in any business, you're going to win. So just pick what people already measure and go after that stuff. That's what I would say.
Why do you think instructional design programs don't teach business and business skills, or consulting skills, or even psychology? That was another question.
Oh, well, my opinion is that a lot of these instructional design programs are rooted in the education schools at these universities, and I just think the paradigm is not business and profits. I think that's the reason, and I don't have any real evidence to support that. But if you think about it, all these programs are in the education department. They are not in the business department.
Now we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. Colleen, any other questions while we're at it?
Let me check here. This has been a really heated discussion. I have never seen this much since I've been on the show moderating, this much activity in the chat room. Let's see.
All right, well, let's say something more controversial.
No, I think that's pretty much the consensus. I think we've covered all the questions.
All right, good. So we have created a little shift in the Earth's atmosphere today, and our orbit's just a tad different, but that's good. Hey, Bill,
That's very good.
As always, a pleasure. We wish you great luck with the book, and again, I'm going to put the book up real quickly before we leave. And so keep your eyes out. This book's going to be coming out in April, Kindle and hardcover, actually, physical version.
Well, I don't know what the physical version is anymore. We're all digital, right?
That's true.
So what's a physical book?
It's a physical book.
Yep.
Of course, digital
It was great.
Digital is physical too. It's just a different kind of physical.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Bill, as always, a
I
pleasure. And Colleen, yes?
Yeah, I just tweeted the link out again. So for anyone who joined us late, the link to Bill's book is out there. You can go ahead and pre-order at this point.
Yes, you should get on the list because they're going to sell fast. It's going to be like a Stephen King novel.
That's good. but
Flying off the shelf.
So we're going to have a surprise ending then. Hey, Bill, really appreciate it. We wish you again the best. We look forward to your 3rd visit on the show.
Cool. I had a great time. Always a pleasure. Colleen, Rick, thank you. This was great.
Great
thank
seeing you again, Bill.
Colleen and everyone in the chat room, we really appreciate you guys being here, and we will see you guys next week on eLearnChat. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for joining.